Today, we're addressing an issue that is quietly affecting millions of people across the globe: the impact of internet pornography on the brain and its wider consequences on daily life. With the rise of high-speed internet, pornography consumption has shifted from something occasional and physically limited to something that's available every minute of the day in endless quantities. But what we need to understand is that pornography is not just a personal habit that exists in isolation. It is causing real, measurable changes in the brain, and many people are only just beginning to realize how far-reaching these changes are. From the way they interact with others to their relationships, and even their ability to perform sexually, internet pornography is altering lives. In today's video, we're going to focus on the hard facts. This isn't about morality or judgment. This is about the scientific evidence. We'll be exploring the research, the neurological impacts, and the serious consequences of repeated exposure to internet pornography. And for those who are affected, we'll also talk about what recovery looks like and how you can start to undo the damage. The first thing we need to recognize is that pornography consumption has drastically evolved in the last 2 decades. There was a time when access to pornography was limited. People might have had access to magazines, a VHS tape, or even DVDs, but these forms of pornography were finite. A magazine had a set number of pages. A VHS tape had a specific runtime. You could only consume so much before it became repetitive or simply unavailable. But with the advent of high-speed internet, all of this changed. Internet pornography is fundamentally different. We now have streaming platforms, referred to as tube sites, which function like YouTube for porn. These sites offer an endless supply of videos, and users can click from one to the next in seconds. This creates a situation where people can spend hours jumping from video to video, searching for more intense or novel material. This shift in access has had major consequences on the way people consume pornography. In the past, there were natural limits to how much a person could consume. Now, those limits are gone. The internet provides instant access to thousands of videos, all offering different forms of stimulation. And this is where the danger starts. Because here's the thing, our brains are wired to respond to novelty. Every time we see something new, especially something that stimulates our reward system, the brain releases dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that makes us feel good and motivates us to repeat behaviors that give us pleasure. This is how the brain is supposed to function. It rewards behaviors that are beneficial, like eating, socializing, or having sex. But with internet pornography, this system gets hijacked. The more novel the stimulation, the more dopamine is released. Every time a user clicks on a new video, the brain gets a fresh hit of dopamine. Over time, however, the brain builds up a tolerance to the same type of content. This means that what was once stimulating doesn't have the same effect anymore. Users then escalate their consumption, seeking out more extreme or deviant material to achieve the same level of arousal. This is the same pattern we see in other addictions, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or gambling. The brain needs more and more stimulation to reach the same reward. Now, let's get into the specifics of what's happening in the brain. When someone consumes pornography, it triggers the brain's reward system in much the same way as other addictive substances. Every time someone watches porn, the brain releases dopamine, reinforcing the behavior and creating a feedback loop. The more often someone watches porn, the more the brain craves it, and the cycle continues. This is where the concept of neuroplasticity comes into play. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to rewire itself based on our behaviors. Every time we repeat a behavior, we strengthen the neural pathways that support that behavior. So when someone watches pornography repeatedly, those neural pathways associated with seeking out and consuming porn become stronger. Over time, this process makes the behavior feel necessary. The brain becomes conditioned to expect the dopamine hits that come from watching porn, and it starts to crave them. As these pathways become more entrenched, the brain begins to change structurally. Studies have shown that heavy porn users experience real changes in the brain. One study revealed that individuals who consume large amounts of pornography actually have less gray matter in certain areas of the brain, specifically areas that are involved in motivation, decision-making, and impulse control. This is a significant finding because it suggests that the brain is adapting to the frequent consumption of pornography in ways that are similar to what we see in other forms of addiction. But it doesn't stop there. Another key finding is that the brains of frequent porn users show reduced activity in response to sexual stimuli. In other words, their brains become desensitized to normal sexual experiences. The hyperstimulation provided by internet pornography, with its endless novelty and constant escalation, essentially numbs the brain's response to real-life sexual encounters. This desensitization leads to one of the most alarming consequences of regular porn consumption: porn-induced erectile dysfunction, or PIED. Many men who consume pornography find that they can get an erection while watching porn, but when they're with a real-life partner, they struggle or fail to achieve or maintain an erection. The brain has been rewired to respond to the artificial stimulation of pornography, and it no longer reacts to real-world sexual cues in the same way. PID is becoming an increasingly common problem, particularly among younger men. These are men who have grown up with access to high-speed internet and who have been exposed to pornography from a very young age. Many of them have never known a world without streaming porn, and as a result, their sexual responses have been shaped almost entirely by pornography, rather than real-life interactions. The result is that their brains are essentially conditioned to respond to extreme, artificial stimuli, and they find it difficult, if not impossible, to perform sexually with a real-life partner. In addition to erectile dysfunction, many porn users also report experiencing delayed ejaculation or an inability to climax during sex. This is another result of desensitization. The constant escalation and novelty of internet porn create an environment where the brain is continually seeking out more intense stimulation. When faced with the relatively predictable nature of real-life sex, the brain struggles to respond in the same way, making it difficult for the individual to reach orgasm. These changes in the brain are not just anecdotal. There are now dozens of studies linking pornography consumption to measurable changes in brain function, particularly in the areas of impulse control, sexual arousal, and decision-making. The evidence is clear. Repeated exposure to internet pornography is reshaping the brain in ways that are consistent with addiction, and the consequences are very real. But the effects of pornography don't end with the brain's reward system. Heavy pornography consumption has profound impacts on emotional and psychological health as well. One of the most common consequences reported by regular users is a growing sense of dissatisfaction, both with themselves and their relationships. For many users, pornography becomes an escape. They withdraw from social situations, preferring the immediate gratification of porn to the often more complex and slower process of building real-world relationships. Over time, this withdrawal leads to isolation, and with it a host of emotional and psychological issues. Anxiety, depression, and feelings of worthlessness are frequently reported by heavy users. The brain becomes trapped in a cycle of short-term pleasure and long-term dissatisfaction. Another significant psychological consequence is the impact pornography has on relationship satisfaction. There is substantial evidence linking heavy porn use to lower levels of sexual and relationship satisfaction. This makes sense when you consider how pornography affects the brain. The hyperstimulation of pornography creates unrealistic expectations for real-life intimacy. Users become accustomed to the endless variety and instant gratification that pornography provides, and real-life partners simply can't compete with that level of novelty. The result is that individuals find themselves less interested in their partners, less satisfied with their sexual experiences, and less engaged in their relationships. It's not just about physical intimacy either. Pornography also affects emotional intimacy. Many users report feeling detached from their partners, emotionally as well as physically. The brain becomes so accustomed to seeking pleasure from an artificial source that it struggles to form real, emotional connections with others. This emotional detachment can lead to a breakdown in communication, a lack of empathy, and ultimately the collapse of the relationship. The psychological toll doesn't end there. There's also a growing body of evidence linking pornography use to performance anxiety. Many users find that their ability to perform sexually is directly tied to their porn consumption. The more they watch, the less confident they feel in real-world situations. This leads to a vicious cycle. The more anxious they feel, the more they turn to pornography as a coping mechanism, and the more pornography they consume, the worse their performance anxiety becomes. Fortunately, there is a way to undo the damage caused by heavy pornography consumption, but it requires time and commitment. The process is often referred to as rebooting the brain. Rebooting involves abstaining from pornography, and sometimes masturbation as well, in order to allow the brain's reward system to reset. When someone quits pornography, the brain is no longer receiving those constant dopamine hits, and this gives it a chance to recalibrate. Over time, the neural pathways that were strengthened by repeated porn consumption begin to weaken, and the brain becomes more sensitive to natural, real-world experiences. Real-life interactions, both emotional and sexual, become more rewarding again. However, rebooting is not an easy process. For many users, the first stage of rebooting involves a period known as the flatline. A flatline is when someone's libido drops dramatically during the early stages of recovery. This can be a disheartening experience, particularly for individuals who are already struggling with sexual dysfunction. But it's important to understand that the flatline is a natural part of the brain's healing process. It's the brain's way of adjusting to the lack of artificial stimulation, and it takes time for the reward system to reset. In addition to the flatline, many people also experience withdrawal symptoms during the rebooting process. These symptoms can include irritability, anxiety, depression, difficulty concentrating, and even physical symptoms like headaches or fatigue. This is because the brain has become so used to the constant dopamine hits from pornography that, when those hits are suddenly taken away, it goes through a period of adjustment. But these symptoms are temporary. With time, they begin to fade, and individuals start to feel the positive effects of recovery. The benefits of rebooting are significant. Many people report dramatic improvements in their mental health, their relationships, and their overall quality of life. Social anxiety decreases, confidence increases, and emotional intimacy with partners improves. For those who have struggled with porn-induced sexual dysfunction, the results are particularly encouraging. Many individuals find that their sexual performance improves and their attraction to their real-life partners returns. They report feeling more satisfied with their sexual experiences. It's important to recognize, though, that recovery is not a one-size-fits-all process. The length of time it takes to reboot the brain can vary from person to person. For some, it may take only a few weeks, while for others it can take several months or even longer. The key is consistency. It's about sticking to the decision to quit and giving the brain the time it needs to heal. The most important thing to understand is that recovery is possible. The brain is incredibly adaptable, and with the right approach, it can recover from the effects of pornography. The first step is recognizing the problem and committing to the process of rebooting. From there, it's about staying consistent and being patient. The results may not be immediate, but over time, the brain will reset, and the individual will start to experience the benefits of a life free from the compulsive consumption of pornography. So, what's the key takeaway here? Internet pornography is not just a harmless habit. It's reshaping the brain in ways that are consistent with addiction, leading to real, measurable consequences for mental health, relationships, and sexual function. But the good news is that these changes aren't permanent. The brain can recover. By quitting pornography and allowing the brain to reboot, individuals can regain control over their lives, improve their mental and emotional well-being, and reconnect with their partners on a deeper level. This isn't just about sexual health. It's about taking back control of your life. If you recognize any of the patterns we've discussed today in yourself, it might be time to take a closer look at how pornography is affecting you. The evidence is clear. Pornography is not as harmless as many people think, but with the right approach, the damage it causes can be reversed. Thank you for watching this video. If this topic resonated with you, or if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you found this video informative, consider subscribing for more content like this. Until next time, take care